Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We just have a few more joining us, and we'll give them a few minutes. Just give people 1 more minute to join us, and then we can get underway. All right, I think we will start then. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today here at TreeSisters. My name's Angela, and I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a moment. We have a few hundred people signed up for today. I'm not sure how many will join, but because of the numbers, we have turned cameras and mics off, just so everyone can have the same experience, and to help with bandwidth a little bit too, which can sometimes be a problem. If you have questions, please put them into the community Zoom chat, and we've got some time at the end of our talk and our sharing to answer any of those and have a bit more of a responsive interaction at that time. So I'll introduce myself first. My name's Angela Mason. I come from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I joined TreeSisters around about 3 months ago. Actually, I think it's 3 months next week. So I feel very lucky to be here. And I'm going to share today a little bit about the strategy, our new restoration strategy. And then Madeline Swidelis, who's here too, will share about the amazing partnerships and projects we have underway at the moment. So, as I said, I'm from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and my ancestors are from there, also from Canada, and then from England, Scotland, Russia, Germany, and I've traced that far back so far, and they're all people who have travelled great distances. So I'm now living in the UK, in Derbyshire, and I've sort of followed my ancestors' path by continuing to travel great distances. I have a mountain that connects with me. So my mountain is the Hunua Ranges in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand. And that's a beautiful preserved native bush of New Zealand. And it's a place I go to connect with the trees. And my moana, my sea, my ocean is the Manukau Harbour, which I grew up next to. It's all mudflats and mangroves, and a place I feel very connected to. And then my awa, my river, is the mighty Waikato, and it's the place that settles me and makes me feel connected to the rivers. And I wanted to share that because in the place that I come from, that is traditional for our Indigenous Māori, and it's something that resonated with me about our connection to nature. And if you want to share in the chat the places that you connect to, please go ahead. It'd be lovely to hear about your mountains or your rivers or the places where you feel most connected to nature, and we can share those a little bit later. So as well as where I come from and sort of who I am, my work background has been in restoration my whole career. Sort of started in rivers and then catchments and then landscapes, and then ultimately looking at large scale landscape restoration, particularly working with partners. And most recently that has been back in New Zealand, Aotearoa, New Zealand, working for the Department of Conservation there in being the bridge, I guess, between perhaps the Western way of looking at the world and the Te Ao Māori way. And that experience really brought me here to TreeSisters, so feeling pretty lucky. So I know we can't see all of each other, but it's really nice to be a part of this today with you all. So because we're all online, I thought maybe we could do some connection just to start us off. And if you feel comfortable, feel free to kind of close your eyes if you want to. But you may want to imagine yourself in your dream forest. So take a moment to think about what that dream forest would be like. Maybe how the air would feel in that forest. Perhaps what the light is like in there. What sounds you can hear. Who's with you? What can you smell? Is it damp underfoot? How do your feet feel on the forest floor? And through our dream forest, we can feel connected to one another, even though we're in different parts of the world and we're joining each other online. We're all connected to this earth and to wanting to look after it. So I'll ask you to, even though I'm sure everybody is enjoying being in that forest, to come back so I can talk a little bit more about what we're doing today. So my role in this talk is really to share a little bit about the big picture context and how the strategy came about for TreeSisters. and where we're going with it, where our direction's taking us, where we are now, what we need to do to make the shift, and where we want to be. And the first thing I really want to do is to acknowledge those who've put the work in. So I've joined TreeSisters 3 months ago. There had been a lot of deep thinking and deep work that went into creating this strategy and shifting how TreeSisters operates in this way. And so I really want to acknowledge Madeline, who you'll meet later, Lorianne Kayette, who would be here today, but she's on holiday. But she's really put in a lot of work into the strategy, done a lot of the key work to help us find our new path. And Georgina Gorman, who's our CE, who's on maternity leave at the moment, but she's been really supporting this from a leadership perspective. So really wanted to acknowledge them, and I just get the joy of sharing it with you. So I feel pretty lucky about that. And then really when I was thinking about it, actually the team's much bigger than that. So we're all a part of this, the network, those of you who support TreeSisters, those of you who are volunteers and work with us, our business partners, our donors, our community and restoration partners who do incredible work all around the world, and you'll hear more from Madeline about them. The Mother Earth delegation of United Original Peoples, and they've really helped us understand how to place ourselves within working with Indigenous communities. And the whole TreeSisters staff have really played a role. And I'd love to have all the pictures of all of the people at some point who are part of this amazing work. So this is really an outline of the piece that I want to speak to. So where we are now, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. And I'm going to start a little bit with where we are now. It's not my favourite, the sort of the doom and gloom side, but I have felt quite poignantly this week, and probably over the past year, that we're in a time of climate change and we're seeing the impacts of it. And I would suggest that almost all of us are touched by this in some way, whether it's heat waves or floods or significant storms. I know for myself, last year in New Zealand, we lost members of our community from a tropical storm, which is not typical of our climate, and it's expected that that will be something that we deal with more and more. We had one of our partners talk about some intense rainfall that they had in Kasese in Uganda and how that's impacted the landscape there and the people. So we all know that the climate and how it's changing is affecting us, and so there is still more work to do. We're also seeing continued deforestation happening and continued land use changes that are not enabling us to work in harmony with nature and the earth. So there is still more for us to do to start to reverse this trend and find a way that we can live with the earth. And this is probably the space that I sit in the most, and I hope you all do too. It's the space of hope. So I feel really hopeful. Like I said, I've been working in this field for a long time. I used to be a bit of a fringe on it, a bit of a weird environmentalist. Now it's pretty mainstream. I can talk to just about anybody about the issues that are out there, and the momentum that's been building around what the earth we need to do to change is really significant, whether it's policies and legislation, whether it's people and the movement behind it that you are all a part of. I find it really hopeful, really exciting, and joining TreeSisters has really helped me feel hopeful because of the type of work that we're doing. So we're definitely in a place of hope, but there are some things that TreeSisters recognised we needed to do to be even better. TreeSisters have planted millions of trees since they started back in 2010, and actually I think it was 2012, and that is incredible to see that transformation happen, but there's more we can do to address the issues out there. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of those issues. So in developing the strategy, Lorianne and Madeline and Georgina really looked at like the context that we're sitting within. So there is more resources going into reforestation. It's really exciting worldwide. There's more resources, but there are some issues associated with that, and there's some ways of working that are likely to be more beneficial than others. So some of the things that they saw and that we're looking at are not really addressing the systemic issues. So planting a tree is a hugely important activity to undertake. But if the issues around why those trees aren't already planted, or what will protect them, or why deforestation is happening aren't addressed, then the planting of the tree is unlikely to have long-term success and really make the changes that are needed. Fairness. So with all this resourcing going to reforestation, it's not always going to the places where it should be, and some of the power dynamics that exist are supporting the same sort of power imbalance. So there's some real concerns about where resources are going and if they're going where they should be. Communities' perspectives are often not listened to, so it might be an organisation coming in with ideas about how things should happen, and the communities are saying, actually, we've got our own way of doing it, and they perhaps aren't really being listened to. And there is some risk with, which is why I have the image on the side here, there is some risks that with the resourcing going into these places, it can perpetuate some of the inequalities that are already there. And women's roles and women's empowerment, of course, is a big part of who TreeSisters are. So that's a really important aspect for us to consider. And then Indigenous and Aboriginal peoples' rights and knowledge. I'm sure you've all seen that there's been some really concerning cases about how reforestation and the push for reforestation has actually resulted in some not good outcomes for Indigenous and Aboriginal peoples. But along with the issues, we also see the opportunities. So there's been some research sort of showing that if women are engaged in reforestation work, the likelihood of it being successful is far higher. And the relationship that women have to nature and the way of articulating and taking leadership is quite different to how it might be for the community as a whole. And so there's this opportunity really to elevate and advance women in restoration and reforestation so that they can start making the decisions and having the resources themselves and making those leadership calls. So really positive. And with Indigenous lands and people, 30 to 40% of our forests are in the hands of Indigenous people. And where Indigenous people and Aboriginal people are supported to look after it in the way that they choose to, there's some research that shows that it's about 5 times more likely to be successful and more likely to have good forest cover. So supporting Indigenous lands and the people there to be able to exercise their inherent rights is going to be something that supports reforestation for all of us. In communities, mentioned before, those systemic issues, we know that some communities are, well, one of the examples that sort of stood out to me is deforestation was taking place in a particular area. And the reason it was taking place there is because medical care was expensive. And so the best way to make money was to take it from the forest and use products from the forest, which was causing problems. If you have a sick child and you need to pay for their care, and the only way to do that is from a forest, then planting trees isn't going to be the answer to addressing the sort of systemic issues. So really listening to communities who are at place, who know their lands, who know their places and know their people, and really supporting them provides us a really strong opportunity for really sustained reforestation practices. So all of that understanding brought us to a really clear vision and mission. So we at TreeSisters want to see ethical restoration of forest and trees, and we want to work in harmony with trees and their communities for the planet to survive and thrive. So that's kind of our true north. For the restoration strategy, what we've done is set some pretty clear goals about where we want to be. And we want to be restoring forests in a way that supports connections and relationships to nature, that rebalances power dynamics, and respects the knowledge and wisdom of the communities living in these places. And to do that, there's some things that we need to shift. So I'm speaking about this as if it's in something that's going to happen, but actually a lot of this has already happened. So as I've joined, a lot of the shift is already there, and we're just continuing to improve it. So the two key things that we're doing at the moment is reorienting our funding. So making sure that the resources are going to support the goals that we've identified, and transform our own ways of working. And that's really about, not to put too fine a point on it, decolonizing our processes, going from a power over dynamic to a much more trust-based way of supporting our partners. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the way we've reoriented our funding is to set some really clear priorities. So always going to be a priority for TreeSisters is restoration and protection of forested trees. That hasn't changed. It will always be a big part of what we do. But we would like to see that shift much more to being community-led, so that we are supporting what communities need. We want it to be ethical and nature-led. And I just want to pause for a couple of seconds on both of those. So ethical is one of those weird words that can be a bit hard to define. At TreeSisters, they've been working for the past few years with a number of partners to develop the ethical tree growing framework. And that's really provides the principles and practices that would indicate if the sort of partnerships we were creating were ethical. So it's looking at the social and ecological beneficial forms of reforestation that include rights-based and biocultural approaches to care for trees and communities. So that will come out later this year, and it's probably something that we will, well, I know it's something that we will do a session on. It's some really cool work, but it provides us as our own organisation some great guidelines, and hopefully will be used for others too. And then nature-led, at the moment we're still developing what that means, but the reason we use nature-led is because TreeSisters has an understanding that nature is a living being with its own rights, and that we should be listening to nature's voice where we can, and that we should be giving nature a place in decision-making. Now, we're still figuring out how to do that, but it's a principle that we want to embed in our work. We also have a priority of gender equity and women's empowerment, and we want to see that throughout our funding program. And we want to prioritise working with Aboriginal and Indigenous people. This is something that we really are developing at the moment. So that's kind of key to reorienting our funding program, and we've got a call for partnerships coming out end of summer, round about end of summer, which will have these as the priorities there. And then finally, the other aspect that we really need to look at is how we work. So we had become perhaps a little bit transactional, perhaps a little bit colonialist and patriarchal, unintentionally, kind of how the system worked. And so we're really looking and exploring about how we can undo some of that and shift our ways of working, so we're much more connected, much more collaborative, and we work hand in hand with our partners rather than in a funder-recipient relationship. And to demonstrate that, I can introduce you now to Madeline. I'm going to stop sharing. I can I'm just going to move you over here. Introduce you now to Madeline Skodas, who's going to talk to you about the amazing projects that she supports.
Oh, well, thank you, Angela, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's wonderful to hear it emerging after 2 years of long process to bring that all through, and then it's now really taking shape and emerging into the world. And thank you to everyone who's here. It's so wonderful to be able to share with you all. So we're really grateful for your support and your presence. So I am Madeline. I've been in TreeSisters for 2.5 years. I'm currently based in Birmingham in England. Previous to TreeSisters, my background was in environmental project management and advocacy, also in women's healing and earth connection practices. And in TreeSisters, my role is Tree Partnerships Manager, which is really a joy because I have the great privilege of being able to work directly with our wonderful partners, our wonderful restoration partners. And, you know, perhaps worth mentioning, so we work in a partnerships model. That means that, you know, we form partnerships with restoration, reforestation organizations that work with groups on the ground to achieve the restoration as it is needed in the locations around the world. And yeah, to be honest, whenever I have meetings with our partners, it's always so just profoundly inspiring to witness the incredible work that they're doing. And my intention today is to do my best to transmit and share some of that with you, so that you can also feel the beauty of really what's going on and what we're able to be connected with. I also want to share that we're really working on being able to bring a more direct connection between you, our network, and with our partners. So both through videos and storytelling, but also, you know, I really would love that in a future iteration of an event like this, we can actually have some representatives of the projects come and speak with you directly. So these are all the kind of things that we're working on for the future. So I'm just gonna share. Okay, hopefully you can now all see my screen. Okay, so TreeSisters restoration projects. So I'm just going to start with an overview. So we're currently supporting 11 projects in 9 countries. I'm not going to go into all of these. You can go and read about all of them on our website. But I just wanted to give a quick overview so you can see we've got 3 projects in South America, 6 projects in Africa, and 2 projects in Asia, currently all in tropical forests. And today I'm going to focus in on 5 of those projects, which really reflect some of the priorities that Angela was talking about earlier. So I'm going to start with this wonderful project in Colombia, which we started supporting at the start of this year. It's a community-based reforestation project in Belén de los Andequíes, which is in the Caqueta region of Colombia. And we're working with a planting partner, which is a local NGO called Cordespa, which was formed by residents of Belén de los Andequíes because they wanted to support their local area. So they are totally embedded in the place. They know the landscape, they know the needs of the landscape, and they have really true relationships with the communities there. And it's been really powerful to work with them because they've said to us that it's the first time that they've received funding which is supporting them to do what they believe is best for their place, rather than coming in with a preconceived strategy. So that's been a really beautiful reflection for us of our intentions with the new direction. And so the area they're working in is in the foothills of the, between the Andes and the Amazon. It's a really biodiverse area. They've got 9 municipal reserves and a national park in the area they're working in. And what they're doing is they're working with the families who are living around the edges of those reserves and parks. Now, the context of this area is a very diverse area of Colombia, where there are migrants. Like, a lot of the people are migrants from other areas of Colombia, which means they don't necessarily come from cultures that have that connection with the forest. So a massive focus of this project is around supporting the families to increase their awareness of the importance of the forest, and to shift from seeing the forest as an enemy that prevents them from doing their productive activities to seeing the forest as a friend and an ally. So the way they work is they hold sessions with the families. They include the women, the children, and the elders, to do that kind of connection with the forest piece, and then also to vision together what they want for their lands. So, for example, they invite the children to draw pictures of what they would like to see on their farms. They invite the elders to share stories of how it used to be, and together they co-create a land management plan that includes, that supports the forest, that includes native forestry species as well as agroforestry species. So, for example, native palm species and Amazonian fruits like the copoaçu and acai. And the approach, the overall goal of this is to restore the biological corridors. That's the connections between the different protected areas. But a big focus of this is also around, creating these sustainable economic incomes, because at the moment, a lot of the threat to the forests is the economic activities, because the typical economic activities in the area are often harmful for the forest. So, for example, cattle grazing, growing coca for illicit purposes. So this is why the project is supporting people to develop alternative income sources which are in harmony with the forest. So, for example, they're working with a women's association who are processing the oil of the canangucho palm, which is a native palm to the area. And so the project is also therefore, supporting nutrition for the families through fruits and nuts. It's improving family economies. And there's also a big focus on environmental education with children, which is a really special part of this project. So what they've actually done is they've built all the tree nurseries in schools, as you can see in the picture. And they're working with the children to collect the seeds in the forest, to plant the seeds, to propagate the seeds, to care for the seedlings, to cultivate that connection with the trees. And they're doing workshops with the children as well. So you can see here the children who have been drawing their pictures of how they understand their relationship with nature. Here's one of the beautiful pictures that they've shared with us from those workshops. And now we're going to hear a little bit from the Cordespa team of why they think the project is important in their area.
Que conocernos nosotros mismos qué tenemos para empezar a valorarlo. Y este proyecto me ha mostrado un poco eso, de qué tenemos en el territorio, de cómo estamos y de qué nos hace falta.
Para nosotros como tal, los campesinos, es muy importante porque primero vamos a reforestar, que es lo principal, pero ante ello vamos a obtener un beneficio de ellos. Entonces principalmente nos va a ayudar con la comida y pues con la economía una parte.
Para mí el proyecto es importante porque pues vamos a sembrar vida, como dice aquí en la gorra, sembramos vida. Sembrar un árbol es sembrar vida, es pensar en el futuro de nuestros hijos, de nuestros nietos.
Cada árbol que sembramos es una vida que estamos sembrando y un legado que estamos dejando para la preservación del medio ambiente.
Hey.
Que conocernos nosotros mismos qué tenemos para empezar a...
Moving from these videos. Okay. All right, so moving over to Uganda, a little bit of a shift in geography. The next project that I would love to share with you is a really special project that we're so excited to be working with, which is a women's empowerment and environmental restoration project in the Kasese region of Uganda. And this is a pilot three-way partnership. We're working together with our existing partner, International Tree Foundation, and a local women-led CBO called Alpha Women Empowerment Initiative, and in a three-way partnership directly with TreeSisters, which is focused around exploring what it really means in practice to do a community-led project. So the project is in the Rwenzori Mountains in Mbunga sub-county in Kasisi. And as you can see in these pictures, the terrain there is really steep. It's very fragile landscape, but it's also a biodiversity hotspot. And it's been impacted significantly by droughts. They have a lot of problem with landslides and soil erosion. And so all of those issues are affecting people's livelihoods and well-being. And at the same time, they've got a lot of issues around gender inequality and domestic violence. So this project, which was principally conceived by Alpha Women, who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, is really aiming to address all of those aspects together, which is why it's such an incredible project. So it's a locally led agroforestry project, but with a massive focus on women's empowerment. And I'm going to share more on that in a minute. So in the first year of the project, they're working with 500 women and 100 girls to plant 20,000 trees and 10,000 bamboo plants. And the trees include fodder trees and fruit trees like avocados, mangoes, and jackfruit. And so these trees, a big part of their intention is to stabilize soils. So that's to restore the soils, but also to reduce erosion and landslides, and so support sort of greater resilience to the harsh climate. And in a way which is integrated with gender equality, which I'm going to go into more detail on in a minute. So some of the benefits of that is that, you know, these trees are providing food, fodder, and fuel. It means women don't have to walk so far to go and gather firewood, which gives them more time for other activities. It improves nutrition for the families because of you know, the products from the agroforestry. It's giving them additional income. And also this project has a really special component, which is a process of radical listening. So it's deep listening to the communities themselves to hear what are their solutions. So we're really excited to be exploring that with our wonderful partners. And also we hope that in that listening process, it enables the traditional and indigenous wisdom and knowledge of the area to be heard. So the heart of this project is Alpha Women Empowerment Initiative. These incredible women formed a local non-profit organization. It's an all-female executive team. They're an incredibly visionary group with just profound dedication to their work and supporting their communities. It's beautifully inspiring to work with them. And you know, they are the ones who really recognize this link between landscape restoration and gender equity. And so this project is really about promoting inclusive and equitable relationships between women and men and girls and boys as an integral aspect of landscape restoration. And I'm now going to allow one of the volunteers from Alpha Women to explain that relationship to you in a far better way than I possibly could.
We have trained the women to work together with their husbands, the gardens, that is the coffee plantations and vanilla. Unlike in the past, whereby it was only the men who were engaged in such activities, and women had no right to access the sales from the cash crops like vanilla. Due to the area being so fragile, it is prone to soil erosion. It leads to low production. And when the produces are low, it leads to hunger. And where there is hunger, there to be domestic violence. So Alpha Women Empowerment Initiative needs to extend its services to this area to teach the women on how to control soil erosion and also to prevent domestic violence and protect the environment. We have trained the women to...
So thank you to Masika Elder for her words of wisdom there, explaining to us what this project is really about. And here we could see in practice what Alpha Women are doing. support gender equity. So they've got training in leadership development for women and girls. They're also training gender champions who are working with community groups to promote gender equity. They're supporting sustainable livelihood options for women farmers. That includes startup inputs like seeds, equipment, and manure. They're also reactivating a reusable sanitary pad enterprise that was set up by Alpha Women. So that is providing vocational training and income opportunities for young women, as well as providing sanitary pads, which then support girls to be able to attend school and so on. They've also got a really innovative part of the project, which is about training for couples on joint planning, budgeting, and benefit sharing in agroforestry, to directly support those issues that Masika Elder was speaking about in the video. And they're also working on reforming procedures for local conservation committees to be more gender equitable. So it's a really profoundly holistic approach to gender equity that's being carried out in this project. So yeah, our thanks to ITF and to Alpha Women Empowerment Initiative for collaborating with us on this. And actually this morning I was meeting with some of the ITF team members, and they wanted to send their thanks to all of the network for your support, because they recognize that it's your support that makes it possible to do what they are doing. So they're passing on their thanks to you all. Okay, and moving on to our next project in Brazil. So this is a project which was designed, created, and is being implemented by the indigenous Ashaninka people in the Amazon rainforest in the Acre region of Brazil, which is close to the border with Peru. It's a project which was envisioned by Benki Bianco, who is the spiritual and political leader of the Ashaninka people, who you can see over on the right of the slide. So the vision he had was to plant a forest garden of native fruit trees to restore the forests and to benefit the Ashaninka community and protect their heritage. And so this project is part of a wider vision of the Urenca Tassorense Institute, which is a cultural institute they created to preserve the environment and protect traditional knowledge and indigenous culture. So we've been supporting this project since 2019. And so far it's planted 100,000 trees, which put 40 hectares of forest under restoration. So it's contributing to reforesting and protecting the Amazon. It's also providing fruit and nuts to the community, as well as to the non-indigenous locals in the nearby town. And it is also, the project also offering training to young people on agroforestry and really encouraging them to develop this relationship with the earth and with trees and with the forest. And this project, so the income from selling the fruits in the local town, which is not as local as you might imagine because it's quite a trip to get there, but it's the income from that supports the community services for the Ashaninka people. So it's supporting them to preserve their cultural, traditional, and spiritual values. But also this income is supporting the wider mission of the Urenca Tassorense Institute, which is really quite a phenomenal mission to witness and to be able to be connected with. So their mission is about also supporting other indigenous peoples to reclaim their values and traditions, and also to share the Ashaninka ancestral wisdom and values for a better future for the earth. So it's a truly visionary model, and it's quite a privilege to be connected with this project. Here we have some words from Benki about the importance of the project. So it's not just about growing fruit and planting trees to create vegetation cover for the earth. It's also about the medicinal species and how they are developed in the agroforestry system. The agroforestry system brought us autonomy and self-sustainability in balance. And we've also got a few words from one of the members of the community, sharing also about the work they're doing connecting with the youth.
É como se tudo que eu respiro, é como se todo o ar que eu respiro fizesse parte daquele processo ali. Eu planto para me respirar, né? Se eu respiro, eu preciso plantar. Então é uma troca, né, da natureza com o ser humano, é uma troca do eu com a natureza, né? Porque se eu preciso da natureza, então eu também preciso cuidar dela, né? E é uma troca que a gente vem fazendo e o que a gente vem ensinando e vem explicando para os jovens isso, né? Que a vida não é só cidade, não é só pedras, né? Não é só carro, não é só o mundo lá de fora. A vida, a essência da vida tá aqui, tá na floresta, tá na natureza, tá no que plantamos, tá no que colhemos, né? Também, porque esse é o objetivo principal, esse é o ponto principal. Né? É como se...
Okay, and finally moving on to the last two projects that I'd love to share with you, which are in Bolivia and the DRC. So there are two projects with this one wonderful partner, Voix Libre, and their local partner, Voces Libres in Bolivia and FEF in the DRC. And this project is called Forest Planters Are Roots for the World. That's a wonderful name. And Voix Libre is a truly inspiring and unique organization. So they've been doing transformational work in Bolivia for over 25 years. Their efforts are very much focused on the most vulnerable people in society, especially women and children. And they bring an approach of solidarity based in like really deep love, care, and respect for every single human being. And this can be really felt in all of their work. And the way they work is a holistic approach that includes therapies and support to overcome trauma alongside empowerment, including support like education, training, legal aid, microcredits. They've also got a really strong track record in Bolivia on women's rights and advocacy. And they work also on ending child labor in mines and on the streets. And something that's really special about this organization that I've truly never seen before is that many of the current working team were actually recipients of Voix Libre's support in their youth and are now in these professional roles, thanks to having received that support. So it's a truly incredible organization. And in recent years, they started to do tree planting as part of their programs because they realized the benefits of trees for supporting people's well-being. And they saw how powerful that was. They then expanded that to work to more of the women and communities they work with. And they also expanded their work into other countries. So hence, we're now supporting two of their projects in Bolivia and the DRC. So in this project, they've got over 1,000 people in Bolivia and over 900 people in the DRC, which is almost entirely indigenous women. And what they're doing is they're planting edible squares, so like fruit, like communal squares of fruit trees and communal areas in the villages. And they're also in Bolivia supporting the reforestation of the Tunari National Park that's been really impacted by fires. And again, working in a holistic way, supporting the people involved, the communities. They're offering training in organic agriculture and in tree planting. So in the DRC, the context of this project is they're working in the Ruzizi Plain, which is close to the borders with Rwanda and Burundi. And it's an area which used to be really productive, but recently they've really suffered with low rainfall, which is impacting livelihoods. Similarly, in Bolivia, they're working in communities in Potosí and Cochabamba, which are often living in arid landscapes where pollution, particularly from mining, as well as climate impacts, is causing water scarcity and soil degradation. So the project is bringing vegetation to arid lands, it's supporting climate resilience, it's supporting livelihoods, and it's particularly working with women in environmentally and socially deprived areas. So the trees support improving the soil conditions. They also support bringing back rains. So in the DRC, that people have been reporting 4 times more rain coming in areas that they've been planting the trees in, which is just incredible. And so overall, creating a more sustainable environment while also creating the benefits of like the nutrition from the fruit trees, as well as the organic agriculture, which is supporting obviously as well with nutrition. And the project is supporting women, especially in Bolivia. In this case, I would say to rediscover their connection to the land by becoming protectors of the land and being able to pass on these values to the children. And what we've heard from the DRC team is how they are witnessing people coming together, gathering around, planting the trees, and seeing the benefits, the shared benefits for the community of the fruit from the trees, and how that is actually changing people's mentalities and supporting connections between people around the trees, and how significant they feel that is in an area which is impacted by war. And they've shared that they hold a hope that around transforming the world through trees. So the fundamental vision of these projects is really about recognizing the importance of trees as a foundation for well-being and life. So we're going to wrap up with a beautiful video which we received from the project in Bolivia last week, which really shares some of the joy of the community members who are planting trees in their areas.
Hoy estamos en la OTB Luz de Urcupiña, en la mancomunidad Olmedo. Este lugar se va a volver una plaza comestible. Los comunarios se han hecho para plantar 100 plantas. Una fila de pacay, una fila de limón y otra fila de manzanas. Como verán, ahí todos los comunarios están trabajando de una forma mancomunada. Ellos desean tener este sector lleno de vegetación. De aquí a unos años quieren tener calles con plantas, familias con árboles, su placita comestible.
Tenemos que hacer que la planta esté lo más templada posible. Solamente haciendo el riego de
Doña Albina, ¿por qué es importante tener una plaza comestible en este lugar, Olmedo?
Porque la planta es muy importante, es vida, y gracias a ustedes es Voces Libres que nos han traído estas tan hermosas plantas frutales que hace falta mucho en este valle, en este lugar, que estas plantas dan vida, sombra, embellecen el lugar y estamos muy agradecidos.
Es importante que hay plantitas y frutas anchas y anchas que hay lugar. Y que fruta manda por hoy no hay micos ni gupis y mi congango y chere no es importante que hay plantitas que hay Fundación Voces Libres ayudamos a agradecer con
cuando ven así plantas y la mayoría dicen qué lindo, se alegra a todos los vecinos y la verdad gracias a Voces Libres.
Y estamos nosotros dispuestos para cuidarlo, amarlo y quererlo en este lugar que va a dar mucho lindo para hacer bosquecillo de plantas, de frutales.
¿Hacemos un trato entonces que en 2 meses va a seguir con vida?
Hacemos trato, es para seguir vida, que estamos dispuestos para cuidar.
Trato hecho.
Trato hecho.
Con el equipo técnico vamos a venir cada cierto tiempo a ver simplemente de que los árboles sigan con vida, de que la comunidad se haya involucrado.
So, well, our thanks go really to, firstly to all of the communities and the people who are there doing the dedicated work to restore landscapes and forests, to all our beautiful partners who are working in such a dedicated way and willing to be collaborative and work with us to achieve our vision. And of course, our thanks to all of our network, everyone who is supporting TreeSisters, because ultimately this is a collective effort. We're all part of this process, and no part of this could work without all of the others. So thank you, and I'll hand back over to Angela.
Lovely, thank you, Madeline. Yeah, no, I'd support what Madeline says, and just love those videos. They really make us feel connected to what's happening out there and the work that we're supporting. We have had a couple of questions come through, but please feel free to add any more into the chat. And any we don't get to today, we will respond to probably in a follow-up email, or potentially in some more information on our website. One of the questions that's come through is for you, Madeline, and it's asking how our partners have responded to the change in approach when we've shared it with them.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. I would say that there's been a really clear shift in how it feels to work with our partners. So I think a lot of the partners have been really, really pleased to hear our openness and willingness to work in that collaborative way, and the potential of how that can truly benefit the communities more deeply, because often what they are aware of is how much, you know, the deforestation is a systemic issue, and that trying to respond by just, you know, paying for trees often doesn't really meet the wider needs of the communities. So, you know, when we come and have this approach, which is saying like, hey, how can we really support you to do what you need to do in your landscape? Then it's giving people the opportunity to, you know, respond in a wider way, and you know, develop initiatives which are really deeply supportive of supporting people to live in harmony with the earth, and not just sort of replicating the old processes. And I would say that we've seen that shift also in the way that the partners are working with us and are, you know, doing things like sending us these amazing videos, because I think they feel more connected with us and are also therefore feeling more like they want to share, because there's more of a collaborative partnership feeling. So that's the main things I've noticed so far.
Thank you, Madeline. Yes, I would agree with that too, support that. There's quite a specific question around the microcredits. I don't know, I think you mentioned it in the Voix Libre project about microcredits, and just wondering about what they are and how they pay them back. I don't know if you know.
So the microcredits are not within the scope of what TreeSisters is supporting. That's Voix Libre's wider work, but it is something that Voix Libre are doing with the same communities that we are supporting. And my understanding is that it's what they call solidarity microcredits. So like they offer the microcredits to you know, one group of people, but then once those people get the sort of the benefits, the return, these microcredits, they pass them on to other members. And I think, if I remember rightly, so it's not part of our project, I'm not exactly sure, but I think the way it works is that the exchange for receiving the microcredits is to participate in the community work for restoring their landscapes.
Lovely, thank you, Madeline. And there's one here just asking about monitoring and evaluation. I might take that one. How do we do that under the new approach? And it is something that we're really thinking carefully about. One of the benefits of a sort of tree price model that we had is that it's quite easy to measure. So it's about numbers of trees. So it gives you quite a tidy measure of a thing. And with more systemic work, it does require us to look more broadly at how we monitor. So while we're going to maintain numbers of trees and the reforestation aspect, we want to develop a more less quantitative, more qualitative monitoring system, and we really want to develop that with the communities that we work with. So what success looks like to them will also look like success to us. So that's something that we're finding our way in. It's some work I've done before, and it is more complex, but usually much more rich and interesting. And I think actually what Madeline shared is kind of some of that. It shows the depth. So thank you for that question. There was a question here about any plans to support community orchard planting in the UK. And I'm going to defer on that one because it isn't the focus of our work at the moment, but we are looking at how we support, probably more through connections and linkages, because there are organisations who do that in the UK. So I'll try and get some more information from our engagement and education team to support that. I'm just checking for any more. We're just on time. And Madeline has some questions too. I'll just check that I haven't got any others. Yeah, go ahead, Madeline.
Yeah, I just want to speak quickly to, I had 3 questions come to me directly, which are kind of related. So someone's asking about opportunities to work with us, possibly plans to expand into other areas. So as Angela mentioned earlier on, we are going to be opening an opportunity for new partners to apply to work with us. It'll be around hopefully September, I think, this year that we're going to be opening up that space. So yeah, if you're interested, please do keep an eye out for that. It will be appearing on our website. And there's a really interesting question here about, does the change in priorities that I support mean that we stop supporting some projects that we have been supporting? So I think it's really important to look at, because it is an evolving group of projects that we support, and over time our aim is to shift towards really supporting these community-led type projects, and as we evolve our processes, the further we'll be able to go in that direction. And we have agreements with each partner that we work with. So what we'll be doing is, as agreements come to an end, we'll be reviewing those projects, those partnerships, and seeing how closely aligned they are with our new priorities, and then through conversations with those partners, deciding whether or not to continue in those current projects or to shift our funding towards the newer projects that are coming in. So we're constantly evaluating that against our ethics and our intentions and our vision and mission.
And I might briefly add to that, one of the aspects that we didn't really cover today, but is likely to become more a bigger part of what we do, is influencing the sector, and the ethical tree growing framework will be a big part of that, as will our relationships with our partners, because we don't just want to be doing this, we want this to be the norm in restoration, really, because we believe it's the best way to affect the change we're looking for. So perhaps we can come back a little bit later and share how we're looking at doing that influencing, and bring you into that discussion as well. And then there's just been a question about when we're announcing the call for partnerships. It will be on the website and in the newsletter. So I think, yeah, look out for it, but we'll try and get it out to our network in as many ways as possible so that you can share it too. I think that draws us to an end. So thank you again for everyone taking time out of their day or evening or morning, potentially, depending on where you are. It was a really enjoyable experience to share this all with you, and looking forward to meeting you all again over the coming months. So we can say good night, good morning, good afternoon.
Thank you so much, everyone.